Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece episodes 363 through 365. Chopper is furious. Hogback's evil medical practices. Oars roars. Come out, Straw Hat Crew. And Luffy is the enemy. The ultimate zombie versus the Straw Hat Crew. In these episodes, Chopper decides that he is going to lay a smackdown, but he really doesn't get to do as much as I was hoping. And as far as Luffy facing off with the whole Straw Hat Crew, it's mostly Sanji, because everybody else is just collateral damage. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. I really I do not know what to expect going forward, because there have been a couple of jukes to the left with the way things have gone, and yet I have been able to predict certain stuff. So I'm really interested to see the direction that we go in for certain things. I was really I'm going to talk about some favorite moments real quick, you guys. My number one favorite moment in all of this was Usopp making the same assumption that I did. We have a moment when Oars is sick on the One Piece crew, and the way Hogback has managed him, or not Moria has managed him, is he has taped the wanted posters to Oars' forearm so that he can reference them and figure out who he needs to target. And I was also thinking that maybe the fact that Sanji's poster is not an actual photo would slow him down. But I failed to think through the way that Luffy seems to perceive human beings in a completely inaccurate way. You guys, there is an SNL skit. Do y'all remember this story about a fresco of Jesus in an Italian church? And this old lady claims to be a professional restorer, or at least to be experienced, if not a professional. And they allowed her to restore this ancient fresco that was 600 years old. And she made it into this bizarre, I can't even think of an adequate word. There's something almost Dali-esque about how horrifying the face became after she handled it. And then she demanded to be paid after ruining this priceless work of religious art. She was like, okay, you owe me $700. So anyway, there is an SNL skit where Kate McKinnon pretends to be that woman. And they establish over the course of the skit that she just doesn't see human beings right. And that's why she painted him that way, because that's how she sees him. And she starts to describe Seth whatever his name is, the host of their weekend update. And she is describing him in these bizarre terms. And eventually he's like, okay, you just don't see people right. That's what's going on here. And this is what Luffy is experiencing, I think. And it's not even I would argue that despite the fact that he cannot see their physical characteristics at all clearly, the fact that Luffy was able to recognize Zoro in a way inside the zombie that has Zoro in it And the fact that he's able to recognize Sanji here from this like kind of shitty cartoonish drawing almost makes me want to be like, maybe Luffy sees more clearly than all of us. Maybe he can see like right to the heart of a person. Maybe he can see like an essence more. The physical just doesn't matter to him the way that it gets us all hung up. You know, he's free of that. He's elevated. There is something about Luffy that has moved on to the next plane of consciousness, and he has become more enlightened and can see us for who we are instead of what we look like. Do I think that's actually true? Yes, I do. I have chosen to think that. So that's going to be what I go with from now on, guys, is that Luffy just fucking sees correctly somehow. And if you can prove me wrong, be my guest, but I will not listen to you because this is what I've decided. So anyway, that moment where he says like, this looks just like you. Honestly, when he's looking from the poster to Sanji, I was kind of like, that poster's pretty close. Like, I don't know if that's going to hold him back. And then he says it looks just like you. And I was like, oh my God, I fucking should have known. And then there is a moment that I was sort of surprised by because I thought that this was going to be an issue for other reasons. And this is that he looks at the poster of Usopp, who is the Sogeking in this poster. He has his mask on. And what I was thinking was that Oars would leave Usopp alone because Usopp doesn't have the mask on when he's confronting Oars. But it seems like Oars does recognize that Usopp is the same guy, which begs the question how he can tell when Luffy himself couldn't tell. That was the only thing that I was sort of like, I want him to be unable to discover that Usopp is Sniper King the same way that Luffy was like, for some reason, completely blind to that fact. And there's no moment of consideration when he's looking at his forearm and chasing Usopp. He sees the Sogeking and he just keeps like chasing him. And there's no moment of, is that the same guy, questioning to himself, you know, because he talks to himself a lot and sort of second guesses many things. And I thought that was what we were going to have, would be like some moment of him realizing, oh, I'm chasing the wrong guy. But that never seems to happen. And I kind of wish it did, because if it were to free up Usopp at least from the list of people that he thinks he has to target, then maybe Usopp could have a moment here where he is able to like step in and I don't know that, you know, he could necessarily take on Oars, but he might be able to fly under the radar a little bit more and get something done because he's not being zeroed in on the same way. But anyway, that is not how that goes. So let's start things off with Chopper is furious. And we get this whole like storyline. Oh my God, you guys, I just started playing the video on Funimation. And why is it playing an ad? I pay the premium service fee and I have an ad? That shouldn't be happening. This is the first time that's happened. I'm disgusted. Ugh. Anyway. So this storyline with, you know, what's going on with, oh my God, you guys, it's doing it again. It's asking me like to choose my ad experience. What the fuck, you guys? I pay for this. Oh, I'm not logged in. Okay, Jesus Christ. I was logged in when I was watching the show from this exact same browser window an hour ago. But I guess if you just want to be a fucking piece of shit, which they clearly love being. I am really over Funimation, y'all. I know everybody's lamenting the fact that they're about to be pulled into Crunchyroll, and I'm sure there are downsides to that. But is Crunchyroll worse than this? Because I feel like that would be a tough thing to do. I'm sorry, everybody who's come to listen to One Piece and not to listen to me bitch about Funimation. But, you know, things, I don't plan on certain things either. And what are we going to do? So anyway, this, the whole episode centers around the confrontation between our little crew, but mostly Chopper, with Dr. Hogback, and with the story of Cindry, whose name I always start to get wrong. And this is about what I was sort of expecting, I'll be honest. But I was thinking that it might even be worse than it turned out to be. So I will give a little bit of leeway on this. It's, let's see. Florian says, I thought someone in the Discord said it was on Hulu now too. Yeah, it is. But, I tested it out and I had forgotten that Hulu does this, but it loses its spot when I'm trying to watch it during a recording. And the screen will go black. And then when I start to press play again, if I pause it, it won't pick up where I left off. It'll like go back to the beginning. So as much as Hulu is better for viewing on my television, it is not better for recording. So I'm sticking with Crunchyroll and just watching sitting at my computer, which is not my favorite, but sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. Gus says Crunchyroll is much better. I'm glad Funimation is getting pulled in. Yeah, I really hope that because I keep being told that it's happening and that there's soon going to be one unit, but it's been 2 years since I was assured of that, and that has not yet materialized. So pick up the pace, Crunchyroll. All right. Anyway, so I hope I'm saying her name right, guys, because I feel like I keep getting it wrong. Cindry? Is that how you say her name? The storyline with her is about as basic as it looked like it was going to be from the moment they stumble onto that secret room. And I was a little disappointed that it was as straightforward as it looked, because I was like thinking there might be some kind of more of a twist or something. And you guys know that I was sort of thinking that it was probably like the pervert's room, the Absalom's room, because he is such a peeping Tom. But I also should have realized that despite the fact that he's a major perv, there's no indicator that he is interested in going after her. He is full-throated going after Nami. So why would he be so worshipful and not really like pay her the time of day when he's around her all the time, you know? So it just, the room that they stumbled onto that had all of the like photos of Cindry when she was alive as an actress, and all of the, different, the articles about the accident and everything. That room belongs to Dr. Hogback, who was like obsessed with her. And evidently, she was like a really sweet person as well, which I found genuinely funny that Cindry, thank you, Florian. I found it really funny that Dr. Hogback even bothers to talk about her being a good person, because he genuinely doesn't seem to really get any... He doesn't seem to understand what being a good person even is, or care. Based on the conversation that he has with Chopper, Chopper is just like, you know, he laughs at Chopper and calls him idealistic and naive and all of this stuff. But then he's like, Cindry was so good and sweet and generous and kind. And I was like, and why would you care about any of that? You just don't seem to give a shit about like morality. So I don't feel like you'd value that. And then I started to realize that I think I'm supposed to... So this is something that's really insidious, and I am going to address it here, and I will fully admit that I don't know for a fact this is the case, but I need to just put it out there because it was in my brain and made me like suspicious. So what I had sort of thought might have happened was that Cindry's accident wasn't an accident, and that we would find out that Hogback had actually killed her explicitly so that he could make her into a zombie. And it seems like that's not the case. It seems like it was a genuine accident, and he finds out about it and decides to take matters into his own hands. And Chopper very rightfully is like, consent much? No? Okay. But the thing that I had also considered was that he was actively rejected by her. And that she was going to be maybe not like an incredible model of morality and every like feminine virtue. Maybe she was gorgeous and he grew obsessed with her, and then he met her and she kind of was awful to him, and he was an incel and decided that because she was awful to him, he was going to do what he needed to make her pay, and that he would then enslave her in this weird way as revenge for her rejection. And it's interesting because the fact that she is already engaged to somebody when he wants to propose to her, he doesn't really present it as her being like, as so many guys would, of just like, oh, she wouldn't give me a chance. He was very much approaching it in the story like somebody got there before me, you know. However, so often, and this is a real unfortunate thing, and I feel like we're finally starting to get away from it a little bit, but it's definitely still prevalent. In stories where a woman is victimized by a guy, so often, in order to like sympathize with her, we have to make her otherwise like a perfect human being. Or else the audience will start to wonder if maybe she deserves the way she's being treated. And so a part of me wondered if there was any inkling for Oda of like, I'll make her less than perfect, and maybe he's like, you know, doing this out of a little bit of revenge on her. And then he realized like, oh, people might not see how monstrous a thing this is that he has done because they think she's a bitch. Which is 100% what happens. Like, so many women out there who are actual victims are seen otherwise as being not great human beings. And so everybody just decides it's impossible that they were a victim at all. Either they were the perpetrator themselves and they're turning this around and just straight up lying, or they somehow invited this and they're getting what they get because they invited it and they are getting what they deserve. And this, I mean, Amber Heard is a primary one for me. And I am going to go to my grave saying, Amber Heard might not be a great person, but she was abused, and Johnny Depp is a fucking piece of shit. And you can just quote me for a million years on that, and I will literally never take it back. And it is disgusting how effective his smear campaign was on her, because so many people need a female victim to be like perfectly pure in order for her to qualify as a victim at all. So I was sort of expecting a storyline that was like a little bit more revengey on his part instead of like wish fulfillment, which is what this seems to be. And then I started to be like, but he's portraying her as just such a great person. And I was like, oh man, maybe that's because like some folks might not have sympathized as hard. I don't know. Again, I don't know that that's the thing. I just sort of, it made me sort of stop and realize that may be true, you know, especially based on like a primary target audience for this show would be a lot of like younger men who, unfortunately, a lot of the times media has taught that girls don't give nice guys a chance, and because they don't, they deserve what they get. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm glad that it wasn't revengey, but there is something about the fact that she was just a saint that I was like, I guess, okay, you know, like let's move it along here. And then we have this moment of the Hogback does this like incredible incredibly fetishy thing where he proves his power over her by making her get on hands and knees and lick the floor, which is like a huge humiliation tactic and like a big kink thing. And it just felt so like this show, you guys, it is really filthy sometimes without being, you know what I'm saying? And it just goes on and on. Like there's multiple scenes and she is still licking the floor in the middle of the scene. And we cut to her occasionally still doing it. And I appreciate that it's being done in a manner that is like meant to be appalling and get Chopper like so fired up, but also just the way it's done. Like, you know, and this really reminded me of the Dollhouse. Have you guys seen Dollhouse, the TV show? It was a Joss Whedon show, and it's the kind of show that I bet if I were to go back and watch didn't age well at all. But at the time, it felt genius. And the whole like idea behind it is that you can, instead of going to jail for like a longer sentence, you can forfeit your agency over your body and allow them to upload other consciousnesses into your body and basically send you on missions where they like use your body for recon or assassination attempts or just spy work or whatever. And that means a dramatically shortened sentence. And you get back, like your consciousness gets just put on a shelf for a little while. Your body is used for whatever. And then once it's done, your consciousness gets put back into your body and you have no memory of the things that you did while they had control over you. And it's like initially created as this sort of, you know, program for military use. And of course winds up getting like co-opted in this extremely gross way for sex work that is not consensual. Like these women are not aware that's going to be part of what their bodies are used for. And there is a guy who he basically like puts a particular woman in their path because she won't sleep with him and he wants her. So he makes sure that she winds up in a position where she has to take this deal. And then he sleeps with her repeatedly. And he winds up like taking photos so that when her consciousness is put back, he can torment her with the fact that she did something she would never have done. And this just really, really reminded me of that. And it's a weird, like, despite the fact that Cindry hates him so much and is frequently talking about how much she hates him, there isn't as much like attempting to be like coupley with her from Dr. Hogback as I would have expected based on the way he felt about her. I was thinking that he might be more like Absalom than with Nami than he is, but he's pretty much letting her be his assistant. And he's bummed that she doesn't like him and always talks shit about him. But it's not the kind of like bummed of romantic rejection. It just kind of feels like you're being really disrespectful and mean for no reason. What the hell? And I'm really grateful, to be honest, that we don't have another dude being extremely like gropey with a woman who is unconsenting, because we really only need like none of that. And we already have one, which is more than I want. So having two of them is overkill in that department. But because the storyline is still what it is, whether or not he's overtly like assaulting her, it's still so clearly assault what he's done to her so far anyway, that it hardly matters, you know? And this conversation I found really fascinating because he's like talking about all of this, and Chopper is, he says, because, you know, you guys, when we got to this island, and Chopper was having dinner, and he was talking to Dr. Hogback and still very much idolizing this guy. Chopper, I was like so confused because it seemed very obvious to me that Hogback was the one responsible for the zombies. And Chopper just seemed to have no problem with that. And I was like, what is your deal, Chopper? Like, I know you're not a fool. Like, sometimes you're a fool. Okay, I take that back. My bad. But like, this does seem like something you should have put two and two together. And it turns out he had put two and two together. But in Chopper's mind, the attempt to reanimate people, this was like a worthy goal if it were to be used for the sake of the loved ones who lost somebody, or for the sake of a person who maybe died unexpectedly and had something to tell people and didn't get a chance. And so Chopper was like rooting for him in his research because he thought he knew what Hogback was like striving for, and was willing to sort of be open-minded about what he had to do to achieve this, even though other doctors clearly had a problem with it. And it's unclear to me if they had a problem because they knew quite well exactly what Hogback was up to. I'm going to guess that. Or if they just had a, feeling about the taboo of raising the dead, which would also be perfectly valid for the record. But what Chopper has discovered is that this guy just wants to basically like rule the world and be the master of all of these like mindless undead creatures. And Chopper, very rightfully in my mind, Hogback keeps talking about how he has given them a second life. And Chopper is like, they're not alive. They're not alive. What do you mean? They don't have any free will. Like, this doesn't count as life. They are enslaved to you. That's not being alive. And I was like, thank you, Chopper. Yes, you have articulated this really well. And this all sort of, for me, got crystallized a little bit in this. So there's the moment where Hogback's like telling them how he reanimated Cindry, and he brings her back to life with a shadow, obviously, which means that her personality is like not the same. And he says something like, but she was still beautiful, and frankly, that was all that mattered to me. So when he issues the order to Cindry to attack and kill them, she winds up getting like gripped up. First, Chopper like charges in and is holding her back. And then Robin chimes in and is helping out Chopper by handing him some salt so that they can attempt to get Cindry freed from this body. But then what Hogback says, and this chilled me to the bone, you guys, is, it doesn't matter, Cindry. Keep fighting them. Even if they purify you, I'll just get another shadow. It doesn't matter. And that, more than anything else, really drove home for me how little who she is any kind of factor for him. It is literally just about her body walking around. And that is all he cares about. And whether or not anything of her remains is just, it's not even secondary. It's simply not a factor. And the idea that like she could go through all of this, her body go through all of this over and over again, while he continues to just take shadows and constantly bring her back and bring her back. That is grim, you guys. Even in Dollhouse, if you died, you died. That was it. The body was still a regular human body. Yeah, they had much more advanced healing techniques because of the technology for the whole setup to begin with. So it was a lot harder to get killed, but the human body still would break beyond a certain point. And because Cindry is undead, I don't even know if I want to say undead. That feels like it's something it's not. But her body can just be like used ad nauseum. And that's so upsetting. Like, I don't know, that really got to me. And the look on Cindry's face, we have more than one moment where Cindry is being ordered to kill them and she's having trouble moving. And there's one point right before she has trouble moving that we see all of these what seem to be like memories flickering through her head. And it's sort of like part of her is still in there and trying to fight back. And then she says, she sort of breaks out of this frozen moment and she's like, I'll kill them both. And the way that Chopper and Robin hear that is her saying that she's going to kill them. I am not convinced that was what she was saying. Kill them both could mean Moria and Hogback, you know, it could be Absalom and Moria and Hogback. I kind of thought maybe she had been able to like get clear for a second, but Robin misinterpreted it and stopped her, thinking that Cindry was about to come after her and Chopper. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but Cindry keeps fighting back, and there is another point at which she starts smiling, and it's like the first expression that she has made that isn't this like deadpan, soulless look. And that is the moment that everybody really is starting to be like, oh shit. But she doesn't succeed in breaking out from his control completely in this section of episodes. It's been more than one attempt, but none of them have been successful. And Chopper, for his part, he like goes after Hogback. And he is just like, I really enjoyed this. Says something about how I don't respect you as a doctor anymore because I don't even see you as a doctor. Frankly, that's not even who you are anymore. Like, you have so crossed the line that, of course, you're just a fucking madman who is enslaving people, and you do not deserve the title of doctor. To which Hogback is like, well, fuck you. I'm going to do what I do, and that means I'm going to turn you into a zombie, and then you are going to work for me, and you are going to be so happy to work for, like, the best and most genius doctor that ever lived. And he keeps on talking about how he is a genius, and everybody else should be worshiping him, and I love, love, love when Chopper expresses his like, the hope that he had originally of maybe we're helping people bring their loved ones back so that they could talk for like one last time. We get this bit from Hogback where he's like, helping people? I'm not a fucking chump, dude. I mean, I have tried that. And do you know how relentless it is? Everybody was bringing me their sister, their daughter, their brother, their loved ones. I just got so tired of it. It was endless, and they just whined all the time. And honestly, as much as this was fucked up, I could not help but laugh a little bit because, I mean, I bet it was endless. You know, if you are somebody that can bring people back from the dead, and you're the only one who's figured out how to do it in the world, imagine how long that fucking wait list is. I love the concept, actually, of there being somebody who's like a necromancer for hire, but they have a wait list that's like 7 years out. So people have to find a way to preserve the body because they like, this person can do it, but you have to wait a really long time. And you have to put down a hell of a down payment to hold your spot. Anyway, so yeah, he just doesn't want to do this. And this, there's a comic that came out, and I think it was written by Elliot Kalin, who used to be a writer for The Daily Show, and he's on the podcast, The Flophouse. And, there's this guy who has figured out how to like utilize a certain type of science to turn human beings into dinosaurs. And there's a bit of dialogue where he's talking to somebody who's like, you figured out how to do something incredible and you could be out here curing cancer. And the mad scientist replies, I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. And that's really the energy here. He's just like, I don't want to help people. I want an army of undead slaves. I feel like I'm being very clear. It's weird that you keep coming back to the me helping people thing, because that's super not what I'm about. Gus says, I think Hogback told them when they first got to the mansion that the zombies are naturally occurring on the island. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't remember that, Gus, that he said... Okay, and that he's researching them to bring people back from the dead. You know what? Okay, I vaguely remember that now. That he was sort of trying to suggest that it was like a phenomenon of the soil here or something. I think I vaguely remember that. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, we have multiple moments of, Chopper attempting to attack... I love this when he attacks Hogback and he's like, I'm fighting for my captain who doesn't need to have like zombie slaves in order to make people do what he says. And then we have Robin who uses Pierre ne Fleurs and just rises him up on hundreds, it seems like, pairs of feet into the air. It's Chopper on his own feet, like his feet are being multiplied below him, and Chopper is holding him in like a bear hug so that he's up hundreds of feet above the floor. And then Chopper says, Chopper suplex, and we see him like bend backward, but we don't get to see like the full impact of the thing. We just see this the backward bend. We cut to Luffy for a second, and then when we cut back into the room, we go away to fucking oars, because of course we do. Chopper is just standing next to Robin, and there is like a crater in the floor from oars busting the tower up. So the suplex, I guess, got interrupted. But I was a little bit bummed because I really wanted to see Chopper get to suplex this guy. And I just wanted to, like, this dude deserves it. And I would have enjoyed getting to see Chopper do his thing. But instead, it all gets foiled. And I was like, Oars is ruining everybody's day. He is just out here fucking the whole game up for everybody. And Chopper had just managed to like jump off to the side and get onto the floor, but he almost goes down through the like hole in the ground, the floor that's, high enough up that he'd probably been pretty injured if he landed. And Hogback falls on the other side, and he gets trapped by a piece of falling debris. So I'm really curious if he is going to stay trapped and they're going to come back to him eventually and he's still going to be there just like waiting for them. Or if he's going to find a way out and like become a fucking hassle again. But either way, it's time to talk about Oars. Ugh, this guy. Truly, what a pain in the ass. Everybody is sort of figuring out that this is the zombie that has Luffy's shadow in it. And he is using the posters, like I mentioned, to like locate who he needs to. And this entire bit with Sanji is actually really funny to me, because he is punching at Sanji in a way that all of our friends who were sort of off to the side watching this fight, they all think Sanji is completely pounded into paste. Like, there is no doubt in any of their minds that that's it. That's a wrap on Sanji. And then it turns out that Oars is just like blindly punching. Blindly feels a little strong, but he is not doing any damage whatsoever. Sanji is just dodging him repeatedly. And I was kind of thinking, oh, is Sanji going to be able to just dance circles around him? There's even a moment, as everybody realizes that Sanji is still alive, where we go over to Zoro, who looks like pleased to see that Sanji is holding his own, which I just have to mention because, you know, as we see, him and Zoro get along so poorly that even their shadows are fighting, which is hilarious. And once Sanji sort of seems to feel like, okay, I've been dodging him, I really don't have anything to worry about, that is when it feels like Oars really begins to like pull it out and do his shit. And Sanji starts to be like, okay, it seems like this zombie is actually kind of badass. Oh, brother, what am I going to do? And he's like able to dodge for the most part, but it's a lot of, it's more desperate dodging. It had been kind of effortless seeming. And this time it's really like, oh God, oh God, until finally Oars manages to connect with him and gets him like, he's holding him by his body upside down and says something about how he's going to squash him. And Moria's like instructions to Oars was capture them and put them on their ship. But if you accidentally like kill one, that's not that big a deal. And so this whole thing is like the moment where he's holding Sanji upside down. It seems like basically Oars has given up on the I'm going to keep you alive thing and is purely out here going, okay, I'm going to squash you into paste. That's what's about to happen. And it gets interrupted by Usopp, of all people. And you guys, I really can't with the fact that it takes so much salt to deal with this dude. I'm so bummed. Usopp gets a full shot of, I think, like 3 or 4 balls of salt into Oars' mouth. It's like a lot. And Oars just gulps and looks at him and nothing happens. And I can't tell whether or not the salt they give him is cumulative. Like, I have to assume if they give him 3 and then they give him another 3 later, it's as if they gave him 6 at once. I'm hoping. And not that they have to give him all the salt at the exact same time or else it doesn't do anything. Like, is it being metabolized? I guess that's my main question. But I was just so upset because Usopp is really proud of himself, feeling like, okay, I did the thing. And it doesn't do anything. And they're all just staring, waiting for the salt to, like, you know, activate, I guess. They think that they've won. It's the end of the game. And it doesn't go that way. And I was just like, this is super unfair. So the other thing is that everybody around who is watching this fight is intimidated by Oars' size, but they're like, well, eventually it's going to be my turn to need to like try myself against this dude. So it seems like Frankie and Zoro especially are prepared to eventually have to step forward. But the way that they each go down, like eventually Sanji gets knocked out, Zoro gets knocked out, Frankie, he tries one of his like torpedo things, and that shit just, he dodges it. Ors is like a lot faster and more agile than they expect for something his size. And I have got to agree with Frankie on this one. That just seems super unfair. It really seems like that's the price you pay for being enormous, is agility. You just aren't allowed to move as fast because you're extremely humongous. And that's just part of the package. And the fact that he is fast and quick and has these like reflexes when he's also bigger than the building just doesn't really seem quite fair. But yeah, so the fight with all of them, I'm going to like back away from, because like I said, it basically ends with absolutely everybody knocked out. Let's talk about, you guys, so there's this whole thing going on with Hilden. Is that, I know you guys have told me this literally every time, and I will never remember, and I'm so sorry. But y'all know, the little cereal mascot, he is flying around trying to find Moria because he wants to warn Moria about how Ors is out of control. Which I was like, it's weird to me that you aren't aware that that's part of the plan, is to like let him be out of control for a minute, because that's going to happen. And he seems to be pretty much like, if we, like, even if it is part of the deal that zombies have their own personality retained a little bit, and then eventually they become completely compliant, that's all well and good, but that's assuming that he doesn't destroy the entire island by the time that happens. So you get the vibe that he is attempting to like report this because he's thinking that the damage is about to be sort of beyond repair. And he goes looking a few different places for Moria. So one of the places that he shows up is Absalom's wedding, second attempt at this wedding. And we get a pretty good bit. You guys, the whole, like, so Absalom, we have another bit of him attempting to kiss Nami, and the way that this goes is again very like slow and tons of build up, and he is interrupted by Hilden, who flies in and of course lands in the exact spot where Absalom's lips are going to go. So Absalom winds up kissing him instead, which results in Hilden calling him a pervert degenerate, which I am not a fan of the implied homophobia here, but I think that's correct for Absalom, just for the record. And there is a pretty, like, there's something about the voice actor for Hilden and the way that they're having him voiced that is so endearing to me. And I think it's the fact that Hilden seems to basically be a pretty competent person who is in some bad situations that can't be helped, but he is genuinely like doing his best. Because when he comes in and interrupts the kiss, and of course Absalom is super pissed, and then asks, okay, well, why the fuck are you here? Hilden tries to be like, well, I've been looking for Moria, and I thought maybe he was here. And there's like a brief pause before Absalom's like, well, do you fucking see him here? And Hilden just goes, no, I don't. Maybe he's somewhere else then. Yeah, he probably is. Like, there's the way he responds. He's not even really defensive. He's just like, yeah, I wasn't really thinking fully. I'm sorry about that. I drank my dumb bitch juice this morning, and this is my bad, and I'll be on my way. And there's something about how sort of like he immediately caves that is really, really funny to me, because this is exactly how I would be. I'd bust in and then be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to interrupt. That is so embarrassing. So he leaves there and he runs across the zombie Zoro and Sanji who are fighting. And I sort of skipped over this bit, but they are fighting in front of Dr. Hogback, who is like, make sure you kill the others. And they, of course, initially begin to attack Robin and Chopper. And then they start to like get in each other's way during the fight, as they do. And the Sanji zombie is like, hey, watch it, man. You almost hit me with that strike. Well, maybe if you weren't in my way, this would be over already. And eventually they realize that they can choose to interpret Hogback's order, which is kill the others, as killing each other. And he tries to take his order back once he realizes that they're like choosing to interpret it this way. And Robin just wraps him up and stops him from being able to speak so that he can't take it back. And then she sets him up to be like, if we were zombies, you could probably just tell us to like jump out a window or something. And she lets him loose just long enough for him to say like, I would just tell you, jump out the window and end it all. And of course, these two hear him say that and are like, can do, boss. And they jump out the window. Now, this is the only thing that I consistently get annoyed with this show. And it is something that is so slight that I'm sure anyone else would be like, get over it. And I recognize that, and I want to, but it's distracting. And that is how completely arbitrary it is whether a certain height will kill you to fall from or not. And this ties in with the whole, like, everybody is so impressed that Kokoro could basically fly, but everybody is 600 feet in the air performing these karate moves also. And I get that it wants to be like fun to watch and super dramatic, and that's all well and good. But that means that you sacrifice the moments that are actually meant to be impressive, like him jumping from building to building, with me just going like, that's basically what everybody in the series seems to be able to do anyway. If they have any fighting ability, it's like they can basically fly. And this bit where the two of them jump out the window, they fall a long way. And there had been a bit when Zoro is fighting Oars, where Oars like chucks him into the air, and Zoro is so high up that I think it's Chopper who's like, there is no way he falls from that height and doesn't die. And I'm looking at it like, yeah, but he could just not, though, because the show is just real fast and loose with what's actually dangerous and what's not. So, like, the two zombies, Zoro and Sanji's, they land and are perfectly fine. And I get that zombies are meant to be, like, resilient, but there's a difference between, like, this cut didn't kill me because I don't bleed, and I hit the ground from like 600 feet in the air and didn't break a bone or splatter or anything. They're so perfectly fine that when Hilden stumbles on them again, they are back to fighting each other, and he has to be like, guys, this isn't the bit, like, and he tries to get them to tell him what order they were given, because he suspects that they are going about it the wrong way. But they tell him what the order was, which is kill the others, and then go immediately back to like passionately fighting. And he's sort of like, all right, you know what? I got to move on. I don't have time for this. And he leaves them to it. So I guess they fell all that way. I'm thinking when they're ordered to jump out the window that it's going to turn out they smash themselves up and their shadows go right back into Sanji and Zoro. And I did think that was weird because, like, part of the fun of this I thought was going to be them fighting their shadow selves. So I was sort of taken aback, like, oh, are we just going to like skip that for them? Maybe it's just Luffy fighting his shadow self that's supposed to be sort of the set piece. But it seems like we wanted to have our cake and eat it too, and have them jump out this window and fall forever. Like, it's really emphasized how high up this is, but then be absolutely perfectly fine. And like I said, the irony of it being sort of juxtaposed with Zoro falling and it being really tense and he has to be caught by Robin. I can't get that invested in the falls being dangerous anymore, because it just seems like if you're meant to survive, then it won't be like it's a big fall at all. And I should mention that the way that Robin catches Zoro is she uses the, appearance of hands and makes this like giant net around him that sort of closes, like in a teardrop shape. And it was so creepy, dude. Like, I understand that this is functionally helpful, of course, but there is something about it that is so off-putting. Oh my God. I think it's a combo of like thinking about how warm and soft it would be, because it's all body parts, which like that sounds pleasant on the surface, but when you really think about it, there's something so unnatural about it. And also the fact that like when you see it animated, it looks really ugly. Like, it's all of this tan fleshy color, and it's the shape of like hands repeated can be kind of freaky. And overall, as much as I appreciate that she can fly for very short distances by making tons of arms, and she can make a net to catch him, there's another part of me that is like, ew, don't. Ew, I don't want to see it. Stop it. But anyway, so the thing with Hilton, he like goes on, and there's this really funny moment, at least to me, where he finally does catch up to Moria and is like, I wanted to tell you about this problem because, Oars is really out of control. And Moria is basically like, wow, that sounds like a pretty big problem. I guess you're going to have to figure it out. And Hilton's like, what? And Moria's like, yep, you got this, buddy. Bye. And basically like completely bails and leaves him holding the bag. And I don't know why, but it's Moria's whole thing with Luffy in these episodes, which I haven't talked about at all. And I'm like out of time, but I will briefly touch on it. Moria is out here bragging to Luffy about how he has this all under control. But then when it comes to his own underling, he's just like, I'm not doing that. And I was just like, man, this emphasizes for me how Hilton is middle management and just like, he is competent. And that's why this shit happens to him. This is the danger of being good at your job, is that if you're too good and prove that you can like rise to the challenge over and over again, they will just fucking screw you. Because they know you will always get it done. And that is the ugly side of having a work ethic. So anyway, Hilton continues to be like a weird dark horse favorite for me. I just really enjoy his character. He is so adorable looking, like his whole look. And then the vibe that he has in this section specifically of just like being a dude who's trying to do his duty. He's doing his best. He's trying to get information out there and just continuously like running into brick walls and the job being so thankless. I was just like, man, I really feel you on this, buddy. I'm super glad to be out of that kind of place. Florian says, I love Moria. He is such a boss, like a boss at a real job. I mean, exactly. So briefly, the fight with Moria and Luffy, if I can even call it that, it's Moria's shadow, but Luffy is like chasing after Moria at the start of these 3 episodes and is, really disgusted at the fact that Oars is coming and Moria is fleeing and is like, you're meant to be here with, like, facing off with me. And the fact that you're trying to flee is dishonorable. And then he sees Oars, and you can see how, like, impressed Luffy is despite himself. And he says something about how, you don't have to listen to this guy. You know, you could do whatever you want. But the bond between Moria and Oars is, like, starting to strengthen. So there's a moment where it seems like maybe he may get through. But then Moria is like, hey, I've given you some photos of people that you need to handle for me. And Oars basically zeroes in right on that. And I love, he looks at the poster of Luffy and then looks at Luffy and is like, I found one. I don't know why that cracked me up so bad. So then we have, like, Luffy avoiding him and trying to track down Moria, who is continuing to just try and, like, sideline Luffy using his shadow. And we have another, like, bat attack, which Luffy uses Gum Gum Gatling, and it's successful this time, when last time it didn't work at all. Actually, I say that. I'm realizing now, it wasn't that it didn't work last time against the bats. Last time he tried to use it against Moria, and Moria used his shadow to create a bunch of little shields against it, and that kept him from getting hit. So I guess the bats are a lot more susceptible to it. But yeah, he, like, Moria sicks his bats on Luffy and then is like, find me when you're done, and he runs off again, and Luffy takes care of them pretty quickly and then turns and begins running after him. And that's most of the episode, is him just, like, trying to chase down Moria and force a fight to happen that isn't likely to happen until a bit later, because Oars is wreaking absolute havoc right now. And I can't decide if Luffy's going to, like, fight Moria while he still doesn't have a shadow, if he's going to figure out a way to get through to Oars and maybe turn Oars to his own side. I don't really see how that happens, but I don't know how this works. There's also the possibility of, like, getting more salt together. I don't know how much of it they have. Or just getting him to, like, drink seawater or eat a salted fish. Literally anything salt, that could be it. There's a part of me that's like, feels like that's so easy that I'd rather it not go that way. But another part of me is like, well, that easy, it sounds easy, but would it be? And also, imagine, like, you manage to purify him when he's in the middle of the crowd, and then this giant creature just begins to fall. That's like a building collapsing, like worse than a building collapsing. They really better pick their moment for when they're going to try and purify him if they do. Anyway, okay, I got to wrap up, but thank you guys all so much for listening, for hanging out with me. This was a really fun section. I'm extremely interested in what happens to Cindry, especially because she's in there somewhere and I want her to get free. And I'm really hoping she's the one who's going to be able to exact revenge on Hogback, because she deserves it, especially. All right, everybody. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.